Welcome to the latest edition of Inside the World of Sports. I'm honored and humbled to be speaking with my next guest, Mr. Steve Wyche. How are you doing, Mr. Steve?
Brian, I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. All right, tell me how your career started.
Well, I mean, it started, coming out of college. I graduated from Howard University a long time ago in 1989 as a newspaper guy. I was a writer. I decided to study print journalism so I could have the journalism background in case all else failed. So I worked at newspapers in Richmond, Virginia, in Miami, Florida, Washington, D.C., and in Atlanta, covering everything from high school sports, where I started in Richmond. And when I first started in Miami, pro boxing to the NBA to major college football, the University of Florida, University of Miami, and then to the NFL when I covered the Dolphins, and then eventually came back and covered the Falcons. So I've had a huge spectrum as a writer. And in 2008, the NFL Network called me to transition to the broadcast realm. So I have been there since. I'm kind of a dinosaur, so to speak, to be at one network for so long. But yep, that's how it started, and that's kind of the path it's taken.
Yeah, I'm a aspiring sports radio host, so I started this to kind of like get my name out there, and then I'm gonna try to be doing some internships and stuff to help my resume and get where I ultimately want to be.
Good, good.
All right, what advice would you give to people pursuing a career in sports media?
Yeah, look, I mean, first off, know your stuff. I mean, you have to know your stuff. There's all kinds of different things. You've got to know the sports you're going to cover, and if you don't, you can read it. You can ask questions, right? You always have to be inquisitive as a journalist. Your curiosity is what makes you good. Ask great questions. Learn how to write. You have to know how to write, even if it's writing a script, even if it's writing just a bite, or if it's writing a piece, because your camera or your recording device might not work at a certain moment, but if you can capture that moment in writing, that's important. When I broke the Colin Kaepernick story, that was a written story. That was not on camera. So you have to understand how to write, which helps you organize your thoughts, which helps you with your vocabulary as well. But the main thing is doing what you're doing, getting internships, and not only learning the craft, but meeting people. Because the old adage, it's not what you know, it is who you know. Yeah, you need to know something, but you need people to pull you along. There's a lot of talented people who have not made the right connections, who are laboring in situations they don't necessarily love. And they've watched people who may not be as talented as them, but who went to conventions, who did the right internships, who never burned bridges when they were on those internships, succeed and accelerate their careers at a pretty rapid rate.
All right, the NFL kind of has an issue with Black coaches and Black executives. And I'm not just saying this because we're Black, but there's qualified individuals that just haven't been given the opportunity. What do you think the NFL can do to help that?
Well, look, the league itself has tried. I mean, the league has put initiatives in, like expanding the Rooney Rule by saying you have to interview more than one person of color for every executive position, every head coaching position, because studies have found that if you interview just one person of color, or one woman or one man, whatever, things don't change. But if you interview multiple, then you say, okay, great, we've experienced a greater candidate pool. So they've done things in terms of policy, in terms of motivations, but it's real hard to change thinking. And that's the issue right now. Now, we did see 3 Black general managers get hired in the recent cycle, which now expands the pool to 5. And now you see they've hired more people on the personnel side of color, which creates kind of a bigger pipeline. So eventually, these owners, if they open their mind, can expand to that. But in terms of coaching, it's really sad when a guy like Todd Bowles or some of these other coaches, Eric Bieniemy, don't get the look that they deserve. So it is more so changing the way these owners think, hiring search firms, if they use them, that have people of color. A lot of these search firms are nothing but a bunch of white guys going around hiring other white guys. So again, it's just kind of this continued journey we're on to change minds, because policies have been changed. It's changing minds more than anything. And that's tough.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can change all the policies you want, but if the people making the hires don't have a change of heart, then what's the point?
Correct.
All right. What are your thoughts on the Eric Bieniemy situation? And if he doesn't somehow get a job next year, what do you think he should do?
Yeah, if Eric doesn't get a head coaching job next year, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he took the college route. He's done college coaching. He's done things before. He would be heavily desired. I would think major programs would pursue him. But I mean, it's just a shame. You hear different things. Some people say, "Oh, he doesn't interview well." Other people say he interviews great. Why? Either way, why hasn't he been hired? And it's just, it's an amazing one. He has been hurt. I will say this by the fact that his teams have gone deep into the playoffs. You've seen historically teams that go deep into the playoffs, their guys don't get hired. Every now and then you'll see a Dan Quinn on a Super Bowl team get a job, but these coaches, when there's vacancies for mid-January and these owners want to hire right away, these coaches that coach deep into the playoffs get hurt. But with Eric Bieniemy, it's a damn shame. He's more than qualified. He gets major endorsements from Andy Reid, bigger endorsements that went to Doug Peterson and Matt Nagy, but they got hired. So it's a hard read when I know some of the people who are doing the hiring continue to pass. So if he doesn't get this opportunity here, either he's going to have to mentally say, okay, I'm just going to be an offensive coordinator forever, or maybe I can go coach in the college ranks, because head coaching salaries at USC and some of those schools are equivalent to those in the NFL.
Yeah, I was thinking one thing that I don't think gets brought up that I think is important. He did, I don't know if it was his agent, but the Arizona Cardinals wanted to interview him, and for some reason they weren't able to make that happen. I think his agent said they had too many interviews in that particular week. So that job may come up in next year, and there's a chance that if he interviews, he could get it. Not a guarantee, but I think that's
We'll see.
yeah.
We'll see.
But if I were him, I mean, I'm not going to tell him what to do. He can do what he wants to do. But I would consider maybe trying something different. Maybe getting a new agent. Maybe considering doing what Matt LaFleur did. Maybe if you get an opportunity to be a play caller, since some people think that's the reason. I don't think that's the number one reason. There's a lot of reasons why, and I really don't think play calling should be the only reason why a coach gets hired. But if people think that that's what's holding you back, maybe if you get an opportunity, a good one, I would consider taking it.
On that note, Andy Reid wasn't a play caller when he got a head coaching job. Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, they weren't play callers. There's a lot of guys who weren't play callers who got jobs. So that's a whack excuse. Yeah. That's a terrible excuse that teams use. But that Joe Judge was a special teams coordinator. So all that stuff, there's an argument against all of it. And so race has to be entered into the equation, because every excuse they give for not hiring Eric Bieniemy can be used conversely against another candidate who got a job.
Mm-hmm. All right, you mentioned the interviews. I was thinking maybe that they should just delay the interviews until after the Super Bowl, so everyone gets a fair playing field and no excuses like a team's still in the playoffs. So then anybody can take an interview at any time. What do you think about that?
Well, Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, is a big proponent of that. And the Bills actually have proposed a change to the NFL to do that. It's probably going nowhere. There's a lot of kind of catch-alls in that, in terms of most teams have their minds made up early on who they're going to hire, and just making them wait could delay a process of what they want to do with their overall staffs and what they want to do in terms of scouting players for the draft, and kind of just getting their house in order. At the same time, like you said, it levels the playing field for everybody. Everybody knows you have to wait. You can still do a lot of the background research and all that stuff in the meantime. You can begin to coordinate things in the meantime to ask your targets. But do you think Todd Bowles, if teams waited, do you think Todd Bowles would still be a defensive coordinator right now? He would be a head coach, because people would see what he did in that NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl, two of the best offenses in the NFL, and be like, man, let's give him another shot. So look, it's a tough one. The way the proposals were written to delay the process were more so teams could say, hey, don't poach our coaches while we're preparing for a playoff game, instead of let's delay to give everybody an equal opportunity. So maybe there'll be more thinking with this. But again, until you change the hearts and the minds of some of these owners when it comes to hiring, um, you can put all the things in place. It's still going to stay status quo.
All right, what NFL stories are you looking forward to this upcoming season?
Well, there's a lot of them. The Aaron Rodgers story is the big one. Is he going to be with the Packers? Is he not? What team is going to come out of nowhere, right? Can the Jags? That division's no, the AFC South isn't sold. I mean, the Titans and Colts look great, but can the Jags make a little noise? What's going to happen with Deshaun Watson? That's an interesting story. So there's a lot of just really intriguing things. I mean, the Cleveland Browns right now on paper look like a powerhouse. Can they threaten the Bills and can they threaten the Chiefs? Can the LA Rams with Matthew Stafford, is he the answer? They think he is. What they gave up with the trade to Detroit, including Jared Goff, to get Matthew Stafford, they think he's the guy who can get him over the top. So there's always a lot of great, intriguing storylines. Injuries will well, I won't say detect, but they will dictate some of the storylines as we get into training camp. But yeah, there's a lot of real intriguing storylines as we move forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson situation. I think at least one of them will be moved. More likely Rodgers because he isn't dealing with any legal situation. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, who were your sleepers at the NFL draft? My sleepers were Davis Mills and Trey Sermon. I think they're going to be really good players, and I think they went to the perfect situation. I think for Mills, he probably needs to sit a little bit longer than Sermon. Sermon will be able to help right away. But who were your sleepers in the NFL draft?
I'm not a draft expert guy. I'm not Dan Jeremiah or Bucky Brooks or Mel Kiper or Todd McShay. Look, you have to look to see what situations they went to. Guys can be great in college, but if they go into situations that aren't necessarily great for them schematically or coaching wise or just organizationally, then they could flop. That's how come you have guys that appear out of nowhere because they get put in favorable situations and not. I do like what the Browns did, getting Greg Newsome, the cornerback, out of Northwestern to add to a lot of depth in their secondary. Well, there's been durability issues, right? Getting Greg Newsome in corner. They've already got Greedy Williams and Denzel Ward, but those guys have been hurt. So you add him, and then you get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker out of Notre Dame, who's kind of a hybrid player. Joe Woods, defensive coordinator, can figure out how to use him behind that really good defensive front. And with all the depth in the secondary that they have, they've got a hybrid defensive tool that can match up on tight ends and running backs in the passing game and can be really good against a running quarterback like Lamar Jackson. So I really like what the Browns did. Those are two rookies with skill sets in that type of scheme and package that could really flourish.
All right, you went to HBCU. My mother, she went to Tennessee State University, and
Right on.
I was interested in going there, but because I was born in Nashville, but Memphis just was a better fit. But what would your message be to young kid thinking about attending an HBCU season?
Yeah, I started at the University of Missouri, so I've had the experiences of going to a PWI in an HBCU, and it's different for everybody's experience. I grew up well out in the suburbs of St. Louis. There were very few people of color. I mean, very few. And some of the things that I experienced, I kind of thought they were normal where I grew up. And even when I went to University of Missouri, and then when I get to Howard, I was like, whoa. People were doing some things to me that I didn't quite understand, or saying things to me I didn't quite understand. And there was a lot of students there who were like me. So I ended up going to Howard initially to play football. I was playing football at University of Missouri. I transferred to Howard because their head coach, Willie Jeffries, had recruited me when he was at Wichita State before he went to Howard. But then I decided, let me go there. Let me just focus on my grades. It was a very, very difficult decision. I call it a transformational one, because if I decided to continue with the football career, I might not be where I am right now. But I kind of went there because I haven't had this experience. And both of my parents went to Hampton. And I was like, let me just go see. Let me just go see. And being in a city like DC and meeting friends who are like me, who are not like me, and seeing there were kids who went to predominantly Black high schools in places like Anchorage, Alaska. Like, what? Wait, what? So it was just really a mind-opening experience for me. It's where I grew up. But it's really to your own taste. I felt more comfortable there. I was academically more prepared to take on the real world than I could imagine. And so a lot of people say, well, if you go to HBCU, but you have to go work in a predominantly white work environment, you're not going to be ready. That's bull stuff. That's crap. You're pushed to a certain way. Yes, you may be around more people who look like you, but academically and just emotionally and mentally, you grow a certain way. And so you learn how to cope, you learn how to deal. And that's just life. So I would just say you can get an education at a Tennessee State, at a Morgan State, at a Howard, at a Hampton, at a Cheney, same type of education that you can get at a Cornell or a Michigan or something like that. But it has to be personally suited for you. You have to figure out what's right, see where you're most comfortable, and no matter where you go, you take advantage of the situation because college is all about what you put into it, not what the college puts into you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've never been a huge fan of where you go. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I think you can have a really good person at Harvard, but an even better person at Howard. So I think it all depends on the individual. All right. How do you think the media can maybe put more of a spotlight on HBCUs? What do you think the media's role and maybe, putting some shine deservedly, not just putting shine because we want that, but, like, for example, I think they're doing the Shrine Bowl. I don't know what TV network is doing that, but you know what I'm talking about, the HBCU. Uh,
The HBCU Legacy Bowl.
yeah, that's what.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I'm part of that committee
yeah,
that's working on that. Well, I mean, look, I mean, we can talk about athletics. If you're from the athletic point of view, look, the networks can continue broadcasting. The schools themselves can continue pushing athletics. That's been a big issue because a lot of HBCUs prioritize academics, and athletics are kind of over here, which is fine. But to a lot of people, you have to understand that sports and entertainment are universally understood, no matter what people's level of education or where they grow up are. Like I never knew where Georgetown University was growing up in Missouri until I saw their basketball team clicking off national championships and competing for them. Like, oh, it's in DC. And so I learned more about the university that way. But in terms of what the media can do, people like me who attended HBCUs, Stan Verrett, Gus Johnson, Michelle Miller, there's some anchors on MSNBC and networks that you can talk about all of these shows like news networks, instead of having all of these experts coming on from Harvard and Columbia, have some come on from Lincoln University and from Southern or Florida A&M. They're equally as qualified. They can talk economics, they can talk political policy, they can talk science, right? So have those people on so people can say, where is Florida A&M? What is Tuskegee University? These are ways to do it by just talking about it. And oftentimes the onus of learning about HBCUs or people who went there, or black people or white people who went to HBCUs, teaching other people about them. No, other people need to learn about the histories of why HBCUs are created, what they're doing now, and the type of people they're producing. The same way a lot of us had to learn about American history, which leaves out certain facts, like psychological studies and medical studies to try to prove that people of color were medically and scientifically inferior. Oh, wait, I never learned that in high school. I never learned about Black Wall Street in Tulsa in high school. So as much as we have to learn or taught about things that, again, were portions of history have been left out, we still had to learn them. Some of the other folks take time, read a book, learn about some of the other things in HBCUs, and those are ways as well. They can personally do it. And again, the way the media can do it is just to continue in every step of the way to try to include hiring people, having these experts on, calling them for information, things like that. Those are ways that can help as well.
yeah. I completely agree with that. And we had a college game day come to our campus, and it was really big. Imagine college game day going to HBCU. That'd be really, really something special. All right. What was it like to break the Colin Kaepernick story? I know that had to be, at the time, you didn't probably think it'd be as big as it's ultimately become. What was it like being in that
Oh,
environment?
I knew it was going to be big. I knew it was going to be big just because, when I was covering the NBA, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, the Denver Nuggets, was not acknowledging the flag during the playing of the national anthem, even though he was standing up because the NBA had a policy. and the blowback was significant. And to see a starting quarterback, a guy who'd been one of the most popular players in the NFL, um, do this at a time in 2016 when the presidential primaries, when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump had just polarized the country, when we are seeing the same things on video, Alton Sterling, Mike Brown, Philando Castile. We saw all that stuff on video. Same thing we saw with George Floyd and some of these other things that we're seeing on video. I knew it was going to be big. And him and I talked about it. I wasn't expecting it. Again, I went up there with a camera. The only reason I was covering that preseason game between Niners and Packers was Cap had just been medically cleared. He had a couple surgeries. He missed the first 2 preseason games. Chip Kelly was a new head coach with the Niners. And they said Chip Kelly's scheme is going to be the scheme that's going to bring Colin Kaepernick back to greatness. Only reason I was there was to see him play. This happens, and whoa. So I knew it was going to be big. I figured it would have legs, maybe not the legs to last 5 years the way it has, or to maybe create the fact where Cap is really a historical figure now. Or in the fact that, in 2016, NFL owners weren't ready to accept it. The NFL wasn't ready to accept it. Now they've embraced players speaking out. They're donating millions to a lot of civic causes that have created change in legislation into people's lives. But yeah, I knew it was going to be a big story. I've worked a lot of big stories, and so that was nothing foreign to me in terms of working a big story, dealing with the repercussions, and constantly staying ahead to educate people and to put it into context. If you go back and you read the lead of that story, you don't have to read any more than the first paragraph that Colin Kaepernick intentionally put himself into controversy by not standing during the playing of the national anthem in protest of police brutality and judicial inequality. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. Explains why he did it. He did it, what he did, why he did it, when he did it, and where he did it. Mm-hmm. Everyone else tried to make, it's offensive. Why is he doing this? It says right there. But nobody just wanted to read his purpose for doing this from the very jump. And that's what I found very, very interesting. And I'm glad that I was able to put it in perspective and context like that, because a lot of people would have just reported, hey, he didn't stand for the national anthem. But I explained why he did it. And it wasn't just a gesture he did randomly.
Yeah, that was awesome. I really, really enjoyed. I read your piece later on, and I really, really enjoyed the way you put it all together. All right.
Thank you.
Can you describe your job with the Falcons?
Well, I mean, I work for the NFL Network. What I am doing with the Atlanta Falcons this season is just a little side work for their digital and broadcast programs. I'm going to help call their preseason games. And I will be contributing columns and video pieces periodically through the season, which, will bring a national perspective to their local fans and regional fans, but also the information I gather, I'll be talking about on the NFL Network. So I'll be bringing some news about the Falcons to a broader audience more frequently and more in depth than we've had in years. So, we have other people who do these things. Peter Schrager does this with the Jets and the Rams. He's from Good Morning Football. Bucky Brooks writes columns for the Cowboys and Jaguars. So these are side opportunities that we do, where we're kind of bringing our level and our realm of knowledge to more of a condensed, more focused level. But, I used to cover the Falcons from 05 to 08 when I worked for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And this is just kind of me going back to a place and to an organization that's been good to my career and helped me do some things. But at the same time, it's a team I don't normally cover. I live in Los Angeles. So during the regular season, it's not like I'm going to be covering them. So people can't say, oh, well, hey, you're so familiar with them, you're giving them a tilted edge. I'm like, no, that would never happen anyway. But just to avoid all perception of that happening, again, it was a team that it's kind of more for preseason dealings, even though I will be contributing some columns and things during the season about how things are shaking out.
All right. I really appreciate you. I learned a lot today, and I'm going to really remember this moving forward.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Brian.